Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Net to Net podcast. I'm your host, Casey Kirsch, here with Sam Kelty. We're here at 6 o'clock on Eastern Time for NBA free agency, just as free agency is opening. Here to see a lot of deals happen. We'll see how quickly they happen, though, because a lot of teams last year got hit with tampering charges because they did their deals as soon as free agency started. And right now, we are about 2 minutes after free agency has started with one deal already being done. So, and that deal being Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors. Him and Clutch Sports have agreed to a 4-year, 100 mil contract with a player option on year 4. Obviously, he is a champion with the Warriors, a 4-time champion, and he's a huge part of their locker room, a big leader of that team. Sam, what are your thoughts on Draymond agreeing to this contract? And also with the rumors of him possibly going to Sacramento, what do you think? Was this the right move for him?
Big move. I would have to say this is a big move for the organization of Golden State Warriors. First, I would say probably the first big move that Mike Dunleavy Jr. as the new GM stepping in for Bob Myers at the end of the season. Big move. This keeps them in that championship window. Losing Draymond, I think it's a different story. It becomes of him going to Sacramento at that time of Sacramento is starting to hit their peak. You bring in Draymond Green, you probably don't sign Harrison Barnes to that extension, that 3-year deal that he just got.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but $100 million for I believe he's 2-time defensive player of the year. He's a 4-time NBA champion. It just makes all the right sense, especially with getting Chris Paul. You had to keep him to keep the dynasty alive because he gives you that defensive punch on the defensive side, and he brings that facility side. You see last year with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson coming off ball screens and having Draymond facilitate it. So this is a really big step. I think if they let Draymond Green walk in free agency, dynasty might be over. You start looking to flip Chris Paul. You look to maybe shed Klay Thompson's salary. Yes, Klay Thompson hasn't been the same since his injuries, but Steph Curry's still playing at a high level, and when you still have Steph Curry still playing at that MVP caliber high level, you have to bring back the key pieces that kept that core intact. And I think that was a great move by Mike Dunleavy's first move.
All right, we just got some more news. Cleveland Cavaliers with guard Karis LeVert signing a new 2-year and $32 million contract, so about $16 million annually. Sam, what do you think about this move? I mean, last year the Cavs they really needed some wing depth. Karis LeVert had a bit of a down year last year, but he did have a career high in threes last year, hitting 127 on 39% from three. So what do you think this move does for the Cavs, who really, in my opinion, needed this re-signing? So what do you think about this, Sam?
Yeah, this is I think a big move with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think this offseason is important for them, and I know if Caleb was on this episode today, like we said in the soccer one, he isn't available, but he'll be on the next one. But I think with this Cavaliers team, they're in a weird spot. They have to be smart over the next few years, especially with retaining Garland, retaining Mitchell, keeping their young core together. And you look at it, Karis LeVert's kind of had to take he's had a weird starting as a starter, then going to the bench, then coming back as a starter, and then being hurt, and kind of like trying to find his role within an organization. And I think he's found one with Cleveland when he came over from Indiana last year. So I think it's a great move for him. It gives them that bench piece. I know they already extended Chetty Osman. Um, so it'll fit right next to their team because he
Yep.
brings, like you said, that 3-point shooting, that defense that they need, and on a 2-year deal for $32 million, that Woes reported, I think is a great deal. It brings kind of, like I said, their bench together, and I'm excited to see what the Cavs do this offseason.
Definitely, definitely, and we are getting many, many more deals in place here. after the Karis LeVert one, obviously that was a huge signing, and even if it doesn't work out for the Cavs, I do expect them to be active here in the trade market, even whether to use that salary over at the trade deadline or just getting a three on their team that can defend the wing there. But we have a lot more moves here. Free agency is really kicking off. One notable signing here being Kobe White re-signing with Sam's Chicago Bulls for a 3-year and $33 million deal. He had a bounce back season last year and was a pivotal part of keeping the Bulls afloat and bringing them back into the play-in game. Sam, what are your thoughts about your team re-signing Kobe White and for that 3-year, $33 million that he can still progress through?
Yeah, I'm excited that we're bringing him back. He was one of the players I would love to retain from last year. He had, like you said, he had a bounce back year. He shot the ball well from three. I think he did well. I think last year he he was more of the they tried to play him at the point guard role, and I didn't think that was like a great fit because he's in that weird limbo of being that combo guard that can play both positions, but he doesn't really do well. And if you saw the way he played at North Carolina, it was really off ball. He really wasn't their main ball handler. He wouldn't bring it. He wasn't that traditional bringing it up the floor. And like you said, he had a bounce back year with Chicago. He upped his free throw shooting from the year prior. His 3-point shooting, his field goals were all up, and he did very well. I know the points were down because he kind of wasn't the starter this year. He was more of like that first man off the bench, sixth man, seventh man off the bench. I think it fits him well because right now Chicago doesn't have that point guard. Like there has been reports of Lonzo Ball's not coming back, maybe for all of next year. I would like to see what we do in free agency. I hope we go after a Derrick Rose because if we bring a Derrick Rose improved his 3-point shooting, his free throw shooting. He could come in and mentor Kobe White, and I think that would be
Yep.
a great opportunity. I like what they did. There's so much in free agency that happens throughout this time, and it's so fun to see, and it's very exciting.
So we actually just got an update. So this is kind of new, right? So Adrian Wojnarowski with ESPN, just sent out a tweet because the original report was from Shams out of the Athletic.
Mm-hmm.
So Shams reported the 3-year, $33 million, which I just told you, but apparently Woj has now just tweeted that's a 3-year, $40 million deal. So it could be a little more. Either way, I think the Bulls needed to re-sign him. He's a good young piece, a really good 3-point shooter, and if nothing else, they can always ship him off in the trade market. Just because I think he still has good value around the league, even at that contract. Being a good 3-point shooter and a combo guard. Um, the next big move that was made, Kyle Kuzma of the Washington Wizards was a free agent this offseason, and there was a lot of speculation on where he was going to go, if Cleveland was going to pursue him, if Houston was going to pursue him, if Orlando was going to pursue him, and if he was going to even be back with the Wizards, because apparently the Wizards are going for, after this Bradley Beal trade, they're going for a rebuild. But they have offered Kyle Kuzma a 4-year, $102 million deal to return to the Washington Wizards. If you remember, Kyle Kuzma back when he was on the Lakers agreed to a 3-year, $30 million deal. And because he took that shorter deal, he can now cash in with the Washington Wizards, getting about $25 million annually. And although this is a rebuilding team, I think they needed to bring him back just because the Wizards can't afford to lose that much value. And Kuzma, like Kobe White, has a lot of value around the league, and Kyle Kuzma obviously has way more value, but I think he's going to be a pillar for this Wizards team. And although he just got traded there for Russell Westbrook, he's been a stellar player for them. Sam, what are your thoughts about Kuzma? Do you think it was the right move to go back to the Wizards? And do you think the contract's right here?
Yeah. I like the years. 4 years is a good deal. He's only 27 years old. He was a key part of last year's team. I know they were in a rebuilding year, like you said. He upped his scoring from, I believe he was averaging about 17 and 17 points a game his first year with Washington, and this year he upped it to 21.2. He upped his assist. He was the main focus on the team. Bradley Beal was out for a decent chunk
Yep.
of time last season with injury, and they didn't want to get risk him getting hurt if they were going to trade him. So Kuzma kind of it fits the team because they are in a rebuilding year, like you said, but he can be that main star, be that main guy, especially bringing in Jordan Poole. It'll be interesting to see where Jordan Poole ends up playing at the point guard or the shooting guard, how that's going to work. If he's going to be the main ball handler, or if they're going to bring in a player that can play the point guard position. If see what happens with Monte Morris going forward if they look to move him because he kind of doesn't really fit their timeline. But I think Washington they're in that purgatory situation of they had to move on from Bradley Beal. It was just time.
Yep.
It was and bringing back Kuzma, bringing in Jordan Poole, I think kind of like transitioned the Washington Wizards into a new era of yes, we are one of the worst teams in the league. We need a restart, need a rebuild. It's going to take a few years. It's not going to be a situation of like you resign Kuzma, you bring in Jordan Poole, and we're automatically playing in the play-in tournament. It's
Yep.
going to take a few years, so it'll be
You-
interesting to watch.
Yep, I honestly could see them being a sneaky playing team though.
Really?
Yeah, because you got to think about it. You forgot about your guy Tyus Jones being sent over in the Kristaps
Oh
Porzingis
yeah.
trade, and I think he's going to be the starting point guard next year next to Jordan Poole. And you have Kyle Kuzma. You still have the defense from Denny Advia. He's still a 23-year-old player. You still have Daniel Gafford, who's a quality center, and you still have some good depth with young players. Um, and Washington, we'll see. They still have DeLon right off the bench. They still have uh, a few other shooters, and you never really know. But I could see them being a sneaky playing team next season, just because Tyus Jones. We've never really seen him run his own team before. But now they bring back Kuzma, they bring in Jordan Poole. If Jordan Poole has a good season like he did in 2022 with the Warriors, I could very well see them being a playing team.
Yeah, I can see it too. My thing is just Tyus. He's a really good player. I believe he has one more year left on his deal, his current deal that he signed in 2019 with the Memphis Grizzlies on a 3-year deal. I believe it's his last year. My thing is, if this isn't going well for Washington, they're below 500. They're not even close to the play-in tournament. Do they trade Tyus
Oh,
Jones
100%. Yeah.
and at the
Yeah.
deadline and rebuild even more, moving both of those? So it'll be an interesting team to watch. So I think this year is going to be a very special year because you're going to see a lot of teams take that next step. You're going to see a lot of
Yep.
teams take that regression by getting older. So I can't wait to see. And then talk about free agency going on so much. I just want to get your thoughts on something that happened right before the free agency kicked off. Austin Reeves, who played for the Los Angeles Lakers last year, they offered him a 4-year deal to come back with the offer sheet. So I believe if he does sign with them, he can sign, or if he wants to sign with a different team, they can match it. But they have signed. They're planning to offer Austin Reeves a restricted free agent, 4-year deal for $52 million, according to ESPN. He was flirting around with a 50-40-90. He averaged 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 3.4 assists. How do you feel about the Lakers bringing him back to this new roster and they also let go Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley?
Yeah, I think the Lakers, they're in a good spot here. They have cap space now, finally. They haven't had for a really long time. We'll see what they do with D'Angelo Russell, because I think they'll end up bringing him back if they don't bring in Kyrie Irving, which it looks more like they might even offer Irving because they just cleared up some cap space with Russell not being back yet and Malik Beasley declining his team option, and same with Mo Bamba. But when it comes to Austin Reeves, I think he might wait because he might get a bigger offer from another team. And I know that teams with cap space were drooling over bringing him in. for even more money. I've seen rumors of a 4-year, $100 million deal, which the Lakers can match any offer, and I think they will. They recognize the talent that Austin Reeves is. And like you brought up, he was almost a 50-40-90 guy in his second season, which you don't see too often, especially from an undrafted guy and on a LeBron led team. So I think they'll bring him back regardless. But I think the Lakers are in a good spot to make a run at Kyrie Irving, which I didn't think they would a few days ago because I figured they'd accept these team options. But they're going to cap space, and as long as they don't sign Reeves before Kyrie, they can get Kyrie. It's just whether he wants to go to the Lakers. But they're going to be a sight to see this offseason through free agency. Oh,
Hmm.
and another thing with the Lakers, they just signed Torian Prince to a $4.5 million 1 year deal. So that's another
Hmm.
good wing pickup for him.
Yeah, and talking about Kyrie, I know Kyrie. He said there was reports of him meeting with Phoenix once it opens. How do you feel about him going to uh, Phoenix, and how would that look, and how would that work? What would it be a sign and trade with Dallas? And in that case, most likely be DeAndre Ayton going the other way. How do you see Kyrie fitting with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant?
Personally, I hate the fit. I don't like it at all because who plays defense on that team? You know, who, I mean, you play Kyrie at the one, you play Beal at the two. Can Booker play the three? Maybe. Probably not. He can't defend those wing players, but you obviously would have Kevin Durant at the four, and you probably have to ship out Aiton to do so to get Kyrie in the first place. But Phoenix are making moves right now. I mean, it looks like they just signed Damon Lee back to a 2-year deal with the player option. They
They
bring
also
in
brought
Kate.
in,
They
yep,
bring in Keita Bates-Diop on a 2-year, $5 million deal with a player option. They also brought in a underrated backup center, and Drew Eubanks, to play behind DeAndre Ayton if that's possible. But if they don't move him in the first place, but personally, I don't see the Kyrie fit in Phoenix. I don't think it makes sense. I think it's even more of a doubling down on the we don't need defense type when they brought in Bradley Beal in the first place, and that was one of the main criticisms of that trade to begin with. I think they need depth. I don't think they need Kyrie. They have enough shooting. They have enough scoring. They need defense, which it looks like they're bringing in some good role players, and we'll see what happens. But one thing I am seeing from Woj, the champion this year, Bruce Brown of the Denver Nuggets agreed to a 2-year, $45 million deal with the Indiana Pacers. He got a big
mhm.
contract, which no one thought was even possible before this year. It's a huge loss for Denver because he was such a pivotal piece in this championship run. And even Coach Malone saying that he's not going to leave during their their championship parade didn't come true. But it was pretty much inevitable that he was going to leave and get a big contract. Sam, how do you see the fit with the Pacers? Do you think they are a playing team after this signing? And do you think the contract is right?
The contract's right. He upped his scoring from 9 points a game last year in Brooklyn to 11.5. Uh, he improved his free throw shooting. He improved his minutes and how many games he played. He was very pivotal in their championship run this year. The money makes sense. 45 million for he's not a starter by all means. He's not a starter. He is a great role player. He's a great bench player. He's a great six man. He's great coming off the bench. He gives you that scoring punch when you need it and brings that defense and that energy and that hustle to die for every ball. My only thing is the team. Indiana doesn't make a lot of sense. Indiana's in that weird
Really?
limbo kind of. Yeah, they're on. I would say they're like on. They're in the early stages of what the Washington was in purgatory. They they have a couple guys in Miles Turner and Buddy Hield that who knows where they're gonna be in a year from now. They've been trying to look to move Miles Turner for the last couple years. They tried to go get Aiton last year, and they weren't able to get him because the Phoenix Suns matched his deal. So they ended up re-signing Miles Turner to a few more years. Buddy Hield's been linked to the Lakers for who knows, since he got traded from the Pelicans to the
Yep.
Kings.
Yep.
So who knows if he's going to be there next year? We already saw earlier that they shipped out Chris Duarte to clear some cap space and then bring back. And so yes, they have Tyrese Halliburton. He's a phenomenal player. I don't know why. I was shocked when Sacramento traded him last year or a few years ago or whatever it was, but who knows what the state of Indiana is going to be in the next year. They could be a selling team at the deadline, or they could be a buying team to try to get into the playoffs in the play-in. And yes, they went out and brought in Rick Carlisle last year, which I don't think was a great option. I think he doesn't fit their timeline of we're trying to go more youth, go younger, and they knew that they weren't going to win many games. So it was just kind of, I don't like the fit. If they would have tried to find a way to keep him in uh, Denver, if they would have tried to, if he would have went to a contender, I knew he was going to get the bag no matter what. It's just I would have loved him in Chicago. I think he would have been a great fit in Chicago. Another team that I could see him going to was a Cleveland Cavaliers if they had the money, if they didn't bring back Karis LeVert, a Philadelphia 76ers that could use that. Maybe if the Brooklyn Nets see what they do throughout this free agency. So there is the fit just doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but he deserved the bag no matter what. So I'm happy for that.
Yeah, I actually really like the signing for the Pacers. I mean, it shows from their ownership group who never ever want to tank. I mean, this was like the tank year, and they still didn't even get close to being the worst team in the league. And they drafted Jarice Walker, who is going to be a great player for them. It's going to take some time to develop, but already has an NBA body, ready to play now. You have Tyrese Halliburton, who's the best assister in the league right now. He's a really top point guard coming over from the Sacramento Kings in the Sabonis trade. Personally, I think both teams won this trade. They both go in two different directions. But, I mean, you look at it, you have Benedict Mathurin playing the two, Tyrese at the one. You have Bruce Brown now playing the three as a starter, shooting almost 40% now from three. Playing next to Tyrese Halliburton, that's money right there. And then you're playing Jarice Walker at the four and Miles Turner at the five. Who's scoring on this team? They have some great defensive players, along with some scorers next to Tyrese Halliburton. And I could see them pushing for pushing for the playoffs. I mean, they'll probably end up in the play-in, but they'll be pushing for the playoffs, especially if Jarice Walker has a good start for this year. So moving on to the next deal, and this one, whew, this is a spicy move right here, and we all expected it, but I don't think anyone expected it to be at this number. So free agent forward Jeremy Grant. This is from Shams of the Athletic. Free agent forward Jeremy Grant and Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul have agreed to a 5-year, $160 million deal to return to the Portland Trailblazers, which is $32 million annually. Sam, does that mean Damian Lillard's staying? And I think this is way overpay, but they needed to bring him back. Is this an overpay in your eyes, and is this the right move?
Yeah, it's an overpay. 100%. Yes, he upped his scoring. He upped his shooting, his 3-point shooting. He upped his field goal shooting from last year. He upped a lot in his rebounding too.
Right. He's still a great defender too.
He's a
Yeah.
great defender. He's a great player. I've liked him ever since he came out of Syracuse in 2014. Watched him in college. I watched him when he first came out in Philadelphia and then OKC. Um, 5 years, 160. It's a lot of money to give to a player of his age too. 29 years old. You're going to be stuck on that contract for a while. Damian Lillard, I don't think. Oh, it looks like they're building around Damian still.
Yeah, and I think
They
that
don't.
they've made that pretty clear that
Yeah.
they're still looking to build around Dame, and obviously this is a
Mhm.
huge, huge sign that they're going to keep Dame. So
Dame wanted them to bring back Grant. I didn't think at this level, maybe like a 3-year, $80 million contract sounds maybe a lot better.
yeah,
Maybe a
it
two
sounds a lot
year.
better, but I think Jeremy had all the leverage here because if they lose Jeremy, Dame's requesting a trade. They have to go full rebuild, and who knew? Ownership doesn't want to do that. Obviously, Dame doesn't want to do that. The front office doesn't want to do that. So I think it was Jeremy Grant had all the leverage here. He could have went to any team that would have offered him 30 mil. Maybe not for 5 years, maybe for 2 or 3 years, but like I
Two
said,
with the
Jeremy
player
Jeremy had
option.
all the leverage. Yeah, so
Uh, I would like to see how this looks in a year. You take Scoot Henderson, best player available in the draft. You think that Dame's gone now, and then they sit down 2 days after the draft with ownership. The conversation went well, according to sources, with him and his agent and the ownership, and they pretty much said they're not trading him unless he comes out publicly and says he wants out.
yep.
And one of the biggest things was bringing back Jermaine Grant and bringing him back on a huge deal. I don't know if he's worth 5 years, 160 million. I love the guy. I love watching him play. He has improved every year. I just don't think he's worth that much. And what happens in a year when Dame requests that trade and you're stuck on his contract still, and no one wants to trade for him because of his huge salary. So I feel like this is another Tobias Harris kind of deal waiting to happen. Like he's on a huge contract, and no one really wants to take on his contract. Like it's like a Duncan Robinson contract, a big
Okay,
contract that
he's
they
way better than
overpay.
Duncan
Like,
Robinson. Come
no,
on.
I'm not saying he's as bad, like the same level as Duncan Robinson. I'm just saying Duncan Robinson was overpaid for how good he was with
Mm-hmm.
Miami, and now they're kind of regretting it, trying to get off his contract because what Duncan Robinson was out of the lineup for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then he somehow changed his role and got back into the team and started shooting better. It's just what happens when Grant has a down year and they want to get rid of him and they can't because no one wants to trade for
Right, right. I like the Tobias Harris comparison a lot better because
him.
obviously he was a great player. He had a good season in Philadelphia before he got that contract, and they picked him over Jimmy Butler because Ben Simmons wanted the ball in his hands. But I mean, hindsight is king, and I don't like the 5 years of this. I mean, I would have given him a 3 or 100 mil deal before I given him this deal, and personally, I don't know what the Blazers are doing here, but they're gonna they have to trade someone now. And do you think it's gonna be Scoot? Do you think it's gonna be Shaden Sharp? Do you think it's gonna be Anthony Simons? I mean, what do you think is gonna happen in this offseason for Portland? How do you see them shaping up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think unfortunately the odd man out is Anfree Simons.
Yeah.
They've already said they want to build Scoot with Damian. It's just the determining factor of who's going to play point guard and who's going to play shooting guard. Shaden Sharp had flashes of he has potential to be good. I thought last year coming out of Kentucky, I believe he didn't play a single game at Kentucky, and he went very high because of what he did in high school and AAU. I thought it was too premature, but we did see flashes this year, his rookie year. So it'll be interesting to see if he can make that transition from a shooting guard to a small forward, because you can't. He's very good at shooting the ball. He's just got to work on his defensive game. But I think Anthony Simons is the odd man out. Unfortunately, he's playing out. I think he's a point guard. He's too small. His frame isn't big enough to play the two,
Yeah.
especially against some of those guys that play the two, like a Klay Thompson or Jimmy Butler, who can play that combo guard forward. And I think a team. Honestly, I was gonna say um, a team that could use a point guard other than Chicago, like I said, is Boston.
Hmm.
And I could see a trade. I would like to see Boston go out and try to get Anthony Simons. Maybe if that's using a Malcolm Brogdon. I know they're very high on Malcolm Brogdon. Um, and Derek
Well,
White can play.
Brogdon
Go
didn't
ahead.
get traded to the Clippers because he failed a medical.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that he's even able to be traded right now because of that. Personally, for me, I mean, I saw Anthony Simons. Apparently, they offered him to Toronto for OG Anunoby, and Toronto declined it. Um, but I mean, I agree with you there. I think Anthony Simons is the odd man out. I
Mm-hmm.
would love to see Scoot go somewhere else where he can start and flourish in his own system, be the system, really. Um, but personally, I think Anthony Simons is going to get traded just because he's on so much money, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
look for another wing to fill that spot. And they didn't bring back
Or
Cameron Reddish. We'll see what they do with their
yeah,
other wing players. But Sam.
yeah. I would said Anthony Simons would have been a great fit in Memphis before they made the Marcus Smart trade because when John Morant got suspended for 25 games, they needed a guard, and I think Anthony
You
Simons
think he
could have.
fits next to John Morant though?
No, I don't think he fits great,
Yeah,
but I don't think they would bring him in to just start those 25 games and be that six man off the bench and they go out and get someone else.
yeah,
I don't think he would have been a good replacement because they got rid of Tyus. Um, so I thought that would be a good fit. But yeah, like you said, I think he's out. I want to see what they do with this rest of this free agency. I think if they would have pulled off that trade to get OG Anunoby, I think that would have been perfect because he's a really good defender, one of the best, probably top 10 defenders in our league. Just pure defending, on ball defending. My biggest thing is I want to see what Portland does with the remaining money they have to see if they can up to get a backup center. Because Nurkic has been hurt over the last few years. They really haven't had much cover at center position, so it should be interesting to see.
yeah, definitely. And we'll see what they do. They need some more wing depth. They need a backup center, and we'll see if I mean something that could happen though is Los Angeles Clippers pivot from James Harden and go for Anthony Simons, and they give up Terrence Mann and Nicholas Batum and first round pick or two, and I mean we'll see, but I think that the Blazers are in a good spot just because they have so many good young players, and they just need to find a deal. A deal. I don't think a deal is going to come to them, but they need to find a deal. So, Sam, another big deal that just came out: backup guard Jevion Carter is going to your Chicago Bulls on a 3-year, $20 million deal, so just under $7 million annually. Personally, I think that's a pretty good contract for a player like Jevion Carter. I know he was linked with a lot of contenders and even staying with the Bucks. So like the Bucks, Los Angeles, both Los Angeles teams. But $7 million for someone who can defend, someone who can shoot, someone who can play make. As a starter or a backup, what do you think about this, Sam?
It's a good move. We need a ball. We need a facilitator. Uh, if when we had an actual facilitator on our team in Lonzo Ball, he was a good facilitator, good defender. He had one of his best shooting seasons and in all of his stats his first year in Chicago. And when we had him on the floor, we were top 10 in defending. We were really good offensively because we had someone that could have the ball in their hand and create for our off-ball players in Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. I think Javion Carter brings that because he's a great defender, a great on-ball defender. I've seen him. Watched him play when he was at West Virginia, playing under Bob Huggins' system, the former coach now, but he was coach then at the time. And Bob Huggins likes to play NBA style system, and he fit perfectly in that system. And I think he's one of those kind of chameleons that can just go to a team and fit in their system perfectly. And I
Mm-hmm.
like it. My only thing is we were linked to Derrick Rose, and I think the fan base would love to see
The fan
Derrick
base wanted
Rose.
Derrick Rose, I
I
think,
think the fan
but
base wanted Derrick Rose. I think
yeah,
it also makes sense because we needed a point guard. We need someone that can facilitate
But
and
Javion
mentor.
Carter's a better fit, don't you think?
Oh, he's a better fit. He's a better fit. I think this would just please the Bulls
So
fans. And
it was a sentimental
yeah,
thing that you
and
wanted
I
Derrick
and,
Rose, and it
and I
makes
think
sense, but
and
yeah.
I think there's a possibility he still comes back. Because now my thing is I want to see what happens with Ayo Dosunmu. I want to see what happens with Kobe White. Did we
Yeah.
just re-sign Kobe White to get to trade to use in a trade package? I know we've been linked to DeAndre Ayton over the last couple months. Vucevic just got re-signed. Honestly, I love
What do
bringing
you
back
what do you
Vucevic.
think about Caruso? Is he the odd man out here?
Yes. We were. I think Caruso is a good player. He's a good role player. He's a great defensive player. I think he's the odd man out. If we can get some trade assets for him, I know we were offered late first round picks for him and we declined them. So it just depends on what team comes for him, like a playoff team. I'm thinking like I don't know, maybe the Lakers come in for him or the Nuggets come in for him because the Nuggets did reload on a bunch of draft picks to get back into the next few years.
Hmm.
If we're trading with I don't know Brooklyn Nets who have some picks and need some veteran leadership to come in and play because uh, other than Spencer Dinwiddie, they really don't have that another person that can handle the ball well. So it'll be interesting to see. I think, but going back to it, Javion Carter is a great pickup, and I'm kind of excited to see what Billy Donovan can do in his third season. Um, I wish Lonzo Ball was back, but unfortunately, he had a really
Yeah.
severe injury, and he had surgery that is actually very rare to do. So hopefully he's back in time, but we'll see how it goes for next season. I don't think we're gonna blow up. I don't think we're blowing it
Doesn't
up.
seem like it after these moves, no.
Now,
And so you look at Billy Donovan, the Chicago Bulls team. They bring back Vucevic. They bring in Javion Carter. They bring back Kobe White. So it looks like they're trying to bring this core back to be competitive to push for the playoffs. I mean, where do you see them this next season based on the moves that they made? And do you think th're done making moves?
I don't think we're done. I think we still need bench help. We did bring back Vucevic. We got Andre Drummond to opt into his team option, his player option. So that gives us a good backup center that can come in and play defense and rebound. Vucevic has been one of our more durable players. I believe him and Patrick Williams are the only two that played all 82 games this year. Vucevic had a great season. He upped his scoring, he upped his rebounding, he upped his assists, upped his field goal percentage, and his 3-point shooting. I would like to see. I would like to see Patrick Williams take a bigger step. DeRozan, I think, still has a few good years left. I think we're in that weird window of we have 2, maybe pushing 3 years of a window to try to win it with this core of players. After that, then we look to blow
You
it
think
up.
it's that big of a window with DeRozan aging?
Yeah, I think so. We saw DeRozan. Everybody was kind of confused why we brought DeRozan in. He's 32 years old, and then you saw in his first season he was electric. I would say he was our team MVP over Zach LaVine that year.
Oh, I agree,
And
100%. Yeah,
then if you could, and I think
he was All
LaVine,
NBA that season, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I
yeah.
believe he was an All Star. DeRozan, DeRozan's that one player that gets better in age, and I think it had him getting traded from Toronto to San Antonio, kind of learning under Popovich and going through those rough patches with the Spurs to come to Chicago kind of helped his maturity and his progression over time. And I think it just kind of fits with what our timeline is right now.
Yeah, it
Trying to win it.
definitely helped him a lot learning under Popovich and that Spurs team because they were losing so much, and now he goes to Chicago and they're losing a bunch. No, no, I'm just joking. But yeah, I think DeRozan's got another year or two. Levine's still pretty. He's what 28 now. He's on 4 more years. Um, and you still have some good bench depth as well. Going back to the champions this year, the Denver Nuggets have re-signed free agent Reggie Jackson to a 2-year, $10 million deal. with the player option the second season. He didn't really play that much this past season for them. I think this is just so they have salary if they need to make a trade or anything like that in the future. Sam, how do you see Denver doing this next season as the defending champions, bringing pretty much everyone back, losing a Bruce Brown, who was their sixth man, seventh man out in the playoffs for them, crucial piece for them. But do you see them repeating? And if not, where do you see them finishing next season?
Yeah, that's all good questions. I think losing Bruce Brown, a key piece of their team that went to the championship, uh, will kind of maybe affect them in a bad way because I feel like they should have tried to bring him back. I know it was kind of tight with the money situation, and they knew he was going to get paid. So that that was a big loss. I think they did a pretty good job. I would say they definitely did a pretty good job with bringing in bench pieces through the draft. Um, I think they also bringing back Reggie Jackson. It kind of brings that veteran piece to the team. They also got, I believe they got Julian Strasser in the draft. Uh, they got Jalen Pickett out of
Hmm.
Pittsburgh. I can't. They traded away Maxwell Lewis to get Julian Strother, and I think that was a great thing. They also got Hunter Tyson out of Clemson, a forward. So it's not like they're losing a bunch. They're bringing in young players because they know that they're in the perfect window right now, and sometimes they do. Sometimes teams do need to start thinking about how to bring in bench pieces on minimal money because sometimes you're not because right now you're paying Michael Porter Jr. a lot of money. You're paying Aaron Gordon a lot of money. You're paying Jokic a lot of money. You're paying Jamal Murray a lot of money. KCP is on a decent amount. You can't bring all these guys back in the next over the next few years.
Right.
So you have to start looking at how I can bring in players that can come and contribute right away. And one of those guys I thought did a great job was Christian Braun last year. He comes from a winning program out of Kansas with Coach Hall of Famer Coach Bill Self, um, who is accustomed to winning. He comes in and plays a crucial role through the playoffs, and that's what I think Julian Strother can do at a Gonzaga. You saw Gonzaga why they were so good because they had Julian Strother, they had Drew Timmy, they had that scoring option outside, and Julian Strother could come in right away and shoot the ball well from the three, play good defense. He just needs to get a little stronger when he goes and tries to drive and take it to the rim. Other than that, I think it's a great pickup. I can see them repeating. It's chance though the West is very strong like usual. I like to see how Phoenix does with their thing going. How they bring players back, like you said, they brought in Damian Lee back. They brought Keita Bates-Diop in to start for the 4 minutes, depending on if you play
Yep.
Devin Booker. If you play Devin Booker at the 1, if you play Bradley Beal at the 2, Durant at the 3. That means Keita Bates-Diop would slide in, see if they can try to bring Torrey Craig back. So Denver has enough issues even in the West, and not even talking about the East. Like, for example, the Celtics traded for Kristaps Porzingis, who I know actually just signed a 2-year extension with the Celtics, according to ESPN. So that there, like I said, this year is going to be a very special year because there's so much happening. Like I said, Tingus Pingus, who I call Tingus Pingus, but it's Kristaps
Kristaps
Porzingis.
Porzingis, yes.
If most people don't know, our friend Fish always called him Tingus Pingus, so that's how I always think of it. But he signed a 2-year extension with Boston for around 60 mil. So, kind of transitioning over there, I kind of want to hear what Casey has to say about the Celtics and kind of their movement. Yes, trading a franchise fan favorite who's been there for almost a decade and Marcus Smart, what this means to Boston as going forward next year and what this means to the organization trying to keep the core of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum together.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is keeping the core together, whether it be Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Robert Williams, Al Horford. They have Malcolm Brogdon, who was their sixth man this past year, had some injury concerns, but still a great player regardless. They still have Derek White, who's an All NBA type defender. They bring in Kristaps Porzingis, who is more. He's a really great player, but they're also bring him in for insurance because Robert Williams has dealt with so many injuries over these past few years. But he's going to be a great fit for him. I could definitely see the Celtics pushing for the playoffs or pushing for the championship here this next year, and I think they took a little step back this past year compared to their finals run when they lost to Golden State in 6 games. But I see I'm torn on this deal because yeah, Marcus Smart is a fan favorite, but I like this deal for the Celtics. I think they needed something new. And although Marcus Smart is the first guard defensive player of the year since Gary Payton back in the 90s, I like this move because they need some more front court depth. They didn't really have much outside of Al Horford or Robert Williams playing the five. And now they have some extra depth there. But now that they have Malcolm Brogdon probably going into that starting lineup, you still have Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. And that's kind of all you really need. You bring Kristaps Porzingis, who was a 20 and 10 guy with a block or two last season. Um,
Yes. Speaking of which, you mentioned Robert Williams and Al Horford. What does that mean to them? I know Boston, Joe Mazzulla and the Boston organization love Al Horford. You saw that they traded back for Al Horford when he got traded from OKC. They brought him back. What does this mean for Robert Williams? Robert Williams has, over the last few years, has suffered from a lot of injury. What does this mean? Is he the odd man out? Because he didn't. He's that traditional big man that doesn't really shoot the three.
mm-hmm.
He's more inside post, like the older days of like a Shaq and stuff like that. Like can only really play inside. Does that change how we look at Boston to make a trade at the deadline to get rid of Robert Williams? Because I don't see them moving on from Al Horford, and I don't see a lot of teams taking on Al Horford's contract. But bringing in Kristaps Porzingis and signing him to an extension of 2 years, what does that mean for Robert Williams?
Personally, I don't think it means anything for Robert Williams. I think he's still going to be the starting center next year. I think they'll play Kristaps Porzingis at the four, which I don't know if he's as mobile as he was back in his New York days, but he used to play the four for New York back when he first got drafted. I think Al Horford's the odd man out, and I don't see them moving on from him. But I do think that he's not going to be starting, at least at the beginning of the season next year. And like I said, Robert Williams has been dealing with a lot of injuries these past few years. And if he gets injured, they have Kristaps Porzingis who can play the five. They have Al Horford who can play the five. They have all these pieces in their front court that are versatile. Is the more important thing. Al Horford can play the four or five. Kristaps Porzingis can play the four or five. And a good thing about Kristaps Porzingis, he can play the four and he can shoot. And that's the biggest thing because they play Al Horford because he can shoot, right? Next to Robert Williams. But you don't need all five people to shoot. Robert Williams is a great defender. And as long as he's healthy, he's a vital part to this Boston Celtics defense. And I think he'll be starting next to Kristaps Porzingis next season.
Yeah, yeah, I can. Yeah, I can see it. Those are all great points. I can see that happening. Um, I don't know. I think it just kind of depends on. I feel like who they're playing and how they match up because yes, Al Horford is older, a step slower, but he's really good at defense. He has an outside shot that Robert Williams does not have. So I could see them either starting Al Horford at the five playing or at the four and Porzingis playing either four or five, or I can see them playing. I can see this. I can see Brogdon still being the sixth man, putting in Derek White
Okay.
as the point guard, Jalen Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Porzingis as a starter. I can see that because I think Brogdon flourished more as coming off the bench, but so
Agreed.
did Derek White. But I think Derek White can make that transition better and he can be more reliable because Brogdon kind of was injured.
Yeah, I think he can fill into that Marcus Smart role. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
is an All NBA defender. He's still a good facilitator, and he's a pretty decent shooter as well. I think that's probably why they let Marcus Smart go for Kristaps Porzingis. One, because of Kristaps, his talent, his versatility in the front court, but two, because they believe in Derek White and what he can do on the defensive end to fill in for that Marcus Smart role. So moving off the Celtics, there's been quite a few more big deals going on. We'll start from the beginning with Kyrie Irving, All NBA guard and champion with the Cleveland Cavaliers, agreeing to a 3-year, $126 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks, with a player option in the third season. So 3 years. Sam, what do you think about this deal? So 126 over 3 years with a player option is about $42 million annually. How do you think this affects the Mavericks, and where do you see them going next season?
Yeah, this is a win now move for them. I think Dallas has missed it missed it big on a bunch of free agents over the past few years and in trades as well. So bringing back Irving was a must. I think my only thing is, could this become a sign and trade with a team? Is there something going behind the scenes that we don't know of? Because there was lots of talks leading up to it that he was in talks with would be in talks with the Clippers, the Lakers, the Suns, uh, multiple teams. So who knows if this will be a sign and trade? But if it isn't, it's showing Luca and showing the organization that they're all in. They think they have the key pieces because they were only 2-3 games out of the play-in. We all thought they would be
Yeah, right. But
in the
they were
playoffs.
they were what, number 5 before they made the trade for Kyrie,
Mm-hmm.
and they sunk way down to 3 games below the play-in. So they finished in what, 11th or 12th. They ended up getting the 10th overall pick. It was really a big disappointment, this trade for them, and they lost all of their defensive depth. So I'm curious to see what they do the rest of free agency. I presume they'll be very active in the rest of the trade market and free agent market, trying to find defenders. They've been linked heavily with DeAndre Ayton, who's a serviceable defender. They need rebounding a lot. They need interior defense. And they also need perimeter defense. So anything defending or any front court depth is what they need. Kyrie Irving just solidified their backcourt. And they also have Josh Green, who can play in a guard position as well. So I think their guard positions are fine, but they really, really need some front court depth. Sam, do you think they end up moving off from Christian Wood this offseason?
It depends on who they can get for him. I know they've been in recent leagues. They've been linked to an OG Anunoby or a Pascal Siakam out of Toronto, so it could be a sign and trade with Christian Wood. And kind of going back to what you said is, once they made the trade for Kyrie, they kind of fell from the 5th to the 11th or the 10th spot, I believe. And they did trade away key bench pieces in Dorian Finney-Smith, who gave them that defensive perimeter defense and that three ability to shoot the three. And they lost Spencer Dinwiddie, who was also a decent 3-and-D guard that can play defense on the perimeter and shoot. So you kind of had to give up a lot, and they got Markieff Morris back, but he really didn't amount to anything as much as we like to see. So I think that's why they kind of took that tumble, because they lost key pieces in their lineup, in their bench lineup, and sometimes their starting lineup, because Finney Smith would be in and out of the lineup if he would start, depending on the teams. But like you said, do you think they're going to bring in bench pieces? I think they can if they do end up doing, like I said, a sign and trade with Christian Wood. I don't think they go after a DeAndre Ayton type anymore, because
Yep.
I think DeAndre Ayton gives you that scoring punch on the offensive side, but you saw in the playoffs the last 2 years he was not reliable on the defensive side, and I think they kind of brought someone in that can do that in the draft, who I was raved highly on, Derek Lively the second. His defensive ability to protect the rim. He reminds me of kind of a more raw Tyson Chandler with a who can kind of shoot the three because he's working on his game. But they haven't had that rim protection since Tyson Chandler, and
Right.
I can't wait to see the pick and rolls and the pick and pops with the two of Luka Doncic and Kyrie and Derek Lively, because Derek Lively we know can bring it on the defensive side. I'm just ready to see how he can take that next step into bringing it to the NBA and having that offensive game. I know he had those injuries in the beginning of the season, and yes, he is, I believe, 7 foot, so it's harder for players like that to come back from injuries. But I'm still looking forward to see what happens with this Dallas Mavericks team.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I hope they don't do anything as a Pelicans fan, but I think they will. They'll end up getting some more front court depth, and although it might not be DeAndre Ayton because the Suns said that they're gonna keep him. We'll see what they do. They could use another rim protector because Derek Lively, although he could be really good, he is still a rookie. So moving on, three-time All-Star Chris Middleton has agreed to a 3-year, $102 million deal to stay with the Milwaukee Bucks. His agents tell ESPN. So, with the third year being a player option, Sam, where are the Bucks going? I mean, do you see them after losing in the first round to Miami Heat? Do you see them challenging for this title again? Although they do have Giannis, who's presumably the best player in the league or the second best player in the league. Um, I personally, I think they can. But do you see them bouncing back this next year? Although they had that humiliating loss in round one to an 8 seed Miami Heat.
Well, you forget about that playoff series. Giannis Antetokounmpo wasn't fully healthy,
Yep,
so
he
you have
missed
to.
what, 2 games, 3 games?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and he got hurt at the first game of the and postseason. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Uh, my thing is, what? How can they bring back Brooke Lopez? If they
yeah,
can retain Brooke Lopez, I think that they're contending for the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Um, they brought back Bobby Portis um, on a 4-year extension last year, and I think that was a great move for them. I want to see what they do with bringing back Brook Lopez. That's the main thing. How and then see what if Drew Holiday takes a step back. He's getting older. See how he does. My thing is with Chris Middleton, 3 years, 102. Over the past 2 years, he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't really contributed because he hasn't really been on the floor that much. He's been hurt a
right.
lot. I don't know if I would have gave him a 3-year, $102 million contract. Maybe would have done 2 years, may with a 2+1 with a player option instead of just guaranteeing him 3 years straight up. It will be an interesting see. I think if they didn't retain Chris Middleton and they lose Brooke Lopez, I think we're talking about a different situation in
Yeah.
Milwaukee, maybe blowing it up. They already got rid of Mike Budenholzer. I want to see what they do with coaching wise, um, because I know I saw reports earlier today. People were monitoring Giannis Antetokounmpo's situation with Milwaukee to see
Ooh.
what Milwaukee was going to do this free agency, and I think them bringing back Chris Middleton shows to Giannis that we're still ready to compete for a championship when if
Yep.
you're still committed to here. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think they really had much of a choice but to bring him back. I mean, you think of Giannis wanting to win a championship again in Milwaukee. You know, they still have Drew Holiday, who's an All NBA type defender. You bring back Brook Lopez, presumably. They'll try and do everything they can. And they still have some good squad depth, with some young players coming up. But really, they needed to bring back Chris Middleton. He was a pivotal part of their 2021 championship team. And although he has been injured ever since then, he still is a great player when he's on the floor and healthy. And he fits well next to Giannis that we've seen so far as they won their championship. So personally, I think they needed to, and they did end up giving him a 2+1. It was a player option.
Okay.
So yeah, They should have given him a 1+1, I think, just because of his injury history. But now they're tied to him to 3 years, maybe, uh, if they don't trade him. But uh, I think it was a necessary move for the Bucks, and
Yeah,
I'll
I
see them
want
championship going for the championship next year,
to.
as they do have Giannis. So
I want to see how they replace Javon Carter. What they do with that backup role because he came in
yeah,
and gave good minutes. Because I know, and then in the playoffs, I believe they inserted Javon Carter instead of Grayson Allen and that kind of that combo guard because
yeah,
Javon Carter gave him that kind of defensive punch they needed against Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. That Grayson Allen, yes, he's a good defender, but he's more of an offensive scorer, and they needed defense, especially with Giannis being kind of sideline slash
hmm
not fully healthy. So it'll be interesting to see. And there's still a lot of time in free agency. We'll see what happens all the way up till training camp.
right. So next move, Jakob Poeltl, who was traded to the Toronto Raptors this past year, has agreed to a 4-year, $80 million contract, landing him $20 million per year to stay with the Toronto Raptors. He was traded for a first-round pick this past year, and presumably it was necessary that they had to bring him back too, given that they gave up assets for him. A lot of people thought that Toronto were going to go into a rebuild after their slow start and they didn't make the playoffs this past year, losing to was it Miami? No, they lost to Chicago, and then Chicago lost to Miami. So yeah, Sam, what do you think about this move? Personally, I think they needed to bring him back, and they've always needed rim protection. They've had a lot of these wing type players. That's been the
Mm-hmm.
Masai Ujiri like prototype, the Nick Nurse prototype is getting these 6'7" to 6'9" type players with the long wingspans that can defend multiple positions. They also have Siakam, who they were playing at the center for a while, but he's more of a power forward. And now they have Jakob Poeltl, who played pretty well for them. Didn't lead them to the playoffs, but still is a solid rim protector and a solid defender. So, what are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Darko Rakovic does in his first year as the head coach. He's been a longtime assistant, most recently with the Memphis Grizzlies under Taylor Jenkins, and you know Taylor Jenkins' philosophy defense with Taylor.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how and what he can bring to this team. I definitely think it shows that Toronto's not giving up. I think they still think they have that window of still trying to push to get into the playoffs or make it in the playoffs. I think they have the team. I think it really comes down to what happens with Fred Van Vliet if they look to bring him back. I know he's been linked to multiple
I
teams.
think so, yeah.
Yeah, and they haven't traded OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam yet. I'm kind of shocked that they weren't going into a more rebuilding year. I thought once the firing of Nick Nurse uh, happened, I thought they were going to transition into that rebuilding year, and Jakob Poeltl was going to maybe do a sign and trade with a contending team that could use that big man depth because I would say he's a starter, borderline starter, off the bench player because we saw that in Toronto this year. We saw that in when he played for San Antonio. So it'll be interesting to see what Toronto does moving forward.
Yeah, I think he's a bit more than a borderline starter, though. I think he's really had an underrated run back in San Antonio for the past however many years, and now that he was in Toronto, he was filling out that roster really well. It's just they had such a slow start that they couldn't make it into the playoffs without being in the play-in, and they got unlucky because DeMar DeRozan's daughter was screaming in Toronto, and and all the interviews were about that. But
Hi.
Chicago put an end to that. But I think this is necessary for him, and we'll see what they do. A lot of the reports are saying they're not bringing back Fred VanVleet, and he might be going to Houston for was it like a 3-year, $100 million deal or something
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Something crazy was reported, but which if I'm Toronto, I don't bring him back for that number anyways. I don't think he's worth that, even though he was part of that championship roster in 2019 with Kawhi Leonard.
And he
But
was coming
personally,
off the bench. He was coming
yeah,
off the
he was
bench
coming off the
then.
bench, but he was pivotal in that playoff run. He was hitting threes, playing defense and whatnot, and has that championship experience back in Toronto. as they drafted him, or they undrafted player that they re-signed multiple times. But I think it's a good move to move on from him. But it would have been better if they could have gotten a sign and trade in for him.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, again, kind of switching to another move that happened earlier while we were discussing other things. Free agent George Niang has agreed a 3-year, $26 million contract, reported by Woes, uh, with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Niang leaves the 76ers for another Eastern contender. What do you think about that move and what that shows from Cleveland?
Yeah, I think it's a big move for Cleveland. George Niang is a career 40% from three type player. In the postseason, he shot 46% from the three, along with 50% from the field. And you're taking him from one of your rivals and another Eastern Conference contender, as you said. So I think it's a big move for him. They bring some size in on the wing. He's 6'7", 230. Back from Iowa State, and he's averaging about 8 points or so, which he doesn't need to handle the ball or anything. He was coming off the bench for the Sixers. And when you're playing next to guys like Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell or Evan Mobley, you really just need to be able to shoot and play defense. And George Niang, he does both of those. And I think this is might be a bit high on the contract number for him, but they really needed it, and they take him from another team that they could possibly be competing with this next year, who they lose for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's a good fit. I think he brings that defensive presence that this Cavaliers needed, and some physicality in the small forward position because I don't think Isaac Okoro is the answer.
Yep.
I think he's just going to be that bench role kind of player. I don't think he. I think we'll see what he does going forward, but I just don't think he's the answer. I think it was kind of a stretch to take him that early, and we've seen in the past 6-man kind of players go high. Like Scotty Barnes was a 6-man in college, Isaac Cora was a 6-man in college, Patrick Williams was a 6-man in college, and they went within the top 5, top 10.
Devin Booker too, right?
Devin Booker, yeah, Devin
Yep.
Booker, Tyler Hero, yeah. Though, so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and I just think in this case, Isaac could have used another year in college at Auburn. I think he was just kind of raw coming out, so I think it's a good thing because you can slide George Niang. He shoots, I would say, shoots a little bit better than Isaac Okoro. Gives you something better on the defensive side, and he's a little bit kind of bigger and ready. I wouldn't say ready, but just better to go into, like, if you need to go in against like the Miami Heat with Jimmy Butler and the Brooklyn Nets with Cam Johnson coming back and Mikal Bridges. So I think it just gives them another depth, and I like what they've done. They brought in Karis LeVert back. They brought in George Niang. I just want to see what happens with Jared Allen because I know their one main thing during the playoffs against the Knicks was the size, like spacing the floor, and they struggled at times with both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley on the court together, especially. And they struggled defensively with both of those two on the court. So it'll be interesting. And I think George Niang at the later stretch of the game, you bring him in and then move Mobley to the 5, and they kind of he gives you more floor spacing in that kind of
Definitely.
situation.
Definitely. I think that's why they brought him in. They need some size. They need some shooting out in the wing. And he can defend multiple positions as well. But you talked about free agent Cam Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets. He was traded in the Kevin Durant trade, along with Mikal Bridges and many of those picks and pick swaps. But Cam Johnson, a restricted free agent, agreed to a 4-year, $108 million deal to stay with the Brooklyn Nets, landing him about $27 million per year. So, Sam, what do you think about this deal? They definitely needed to bring him back because they traded Kevin Durant, and he's a really fine piece out on the wing there for him, and I'm sure he'll be starting or just playing a lot of minutes for them over the next few years.
Yeah, I think it was a great job. It shows that they're not trying to get players and then flip them later. I think this shows that Brooklyn thinks they have a team together. I think, and it's not. And you look at it, it's not. It's not a team of superstars. It's a team of a couple stars and a bunch of role players coming together and becoming a team, like in a team sport. And I think that's really good to see because lately we see these guys, superstars, trying to join teams, trying to ring chase, and I think we don't really see just like a couple star or two and a bunch of role players. You see like 3 stars and a bunch of like mediocre minimum players because they don't have the money to do that. But I think Brooklyn, they created a lot of cap space, trading Joe Harris away for a couple second round picks, I believe, to Detroit. And they created a $19.5 million trade exception
Yeah,
that they
they
can use
traded those
later
picks
on.
to Detroit, by the way. Yeah,
Yep.
yep,
And they can use that. That creates money to bring back Cam Johnson on a 4-year deal, which I think is perfect. I think the money was perfect. I think he fits their team as being young enough to compete at a high level and not have to give up a lot and let him leave for free because he's very good at 3-point shooter. He's a very good defensive player. Um, I watched him play in college when he transferred from Pitt to North Carolina. He fit North Carolina's system well, and he fits Brooklyn's system well because he you just need to have someone that can get him the ball for a spot up shot. He brings that mentality on the defensive side, and he complements Mikal Bridges. So it'll be interesting. Brooklyn, I think they have a shot at making the play in, and we'll see from there. I think
yep.
hopefully Ben Simmons, they can get a better return out of him. I hope. I've seen that he's working. He's working hard. I saw that he declined to play at the World FIBA World Cup for his national team, so he can focus on getting back to healthy and be able to play this season. So hopefully he comes back because he has promise. He had promise coming out of LSU. People were comparing him to become like the next LeBron with potential wise, and we saw that his first season, and then after that, kind of downhill. I've seen that he's um, improving his outside jumper, so hopefully it kind of transitions to something, but it's going to take some time. But hopefully he gets back onto the court.
Yep, yep, I agree, and I keep going back, remembering this or Kobe White actually, your player, back in his draft interview when Cam Johnson got drafted. He going, Cam went 11. Cam, whoa, whoa, yeah. So
Yep.
but Cam Johnson's lived up to that 11th pick and some. This is a necessary signing for the Nets to bring him back, and personally, I think the Nets can be a top 6 seed next year in the Eastern Conference. They're just that good. They have that many good role players. I mean, you look at Cam Johnson, you look at Dorian Finney-Smith, you look at Mikal Bridges, you have Cam Thomas. They bring back Dinwiddie maybe. They have Nicholas Claxton, who was a top defensive player last year, and Royce O'Neal, and you have just so many good young players that are still all improving, and I think they can still challenge with some of these top Eastern Conference teams. Although it didn't work out too well for them last season, but with the full training camp, Jock Vaughn having a full training camp with this Nets squad, I could definitely see them even maybe winning a playoff series uh, if they make the right moves. You don't think so, Sam? I think if they bring back their players, they make a trade for some point guard depth. I could see it happening.
I don't know if they can do it under Jock Vaughn. I don't think he's the right coach.
Really?
I think he's that stopgap coach, waiting for maybe let's see what happens with a few other coaches within the league. We'll see. I think see what happens with Joe Mazzulla in Boston. Let's see what happens with some other teams because at Jock Vaughn he's a good coach. He's a good assistant coach. It's just I don't know if he has really what it takes to be the NBA coach. I know he has been a head coach with Orlando, and you saw how that turned out from 2012 to 2015. He wasn't great as a coach. I believe his best season was 2013, 2014, where he only won 23 games with Orlando. So, and that Orlando team, 2013, yeah, was pretty bad. I believe that's when they still had a young Victor Oladipo, Jameer Nelson was still there, Tobias Harris was there. Yes, the team was bad, but he just hasn't shown a lot of promise to be a good coach. I think he's a great assistant coach. I just don't think he's
Well,
fits
I mean,
the
when he took
timeline.
over with Steve Nash, I mean, this past season, he led this Brooklyn Nets team pretty far, and before Kyrie Irving requested out, they were doing really, really well. Now we haven't really seen him coach a lot of role players before, but in last year, they didn't do well against Philadelphia when they lost in the first round. But another year of growth, another year of development, and a full training camp with that squad, who was most of it was traded midseason in the Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant deals. We'll see them all work together in a full training camp, and we'll see if they can actually compete in a playoff series. All right,
Yeah,
and
my thing, just before we move on,
yep,
my thing is just I feel like they haven't had a good enough coach since Kenny Atkinson. I think Kenny Atkinson was a great coach. It's
yep,
just unfortunately he resigned, and I think he fit Brooklyn's like philosophy and what Brooklyn wanted to do. I just think it just didn't work out for him. Someone like that, maybe see what like I said, see what happens with Joe Mazzulla. See what happens with Jason Kidd in Dallas. Maybe he comes back to Brooklyn. Maybe they try it again. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Budenholzer is still out there,
yep, he
so
is.
he might be an option. Doc Rivers is still out there. I think some of these guys could
Or wait, didn't
bring
Mike
something.
Budenholzer go to Philadelphia?
No, he,
Who did?
he is, I believe, still coach.
Who
No,
took?
Philadelphia has Nick Nurse.
Oh,
Philadelphia
Nick
has Nick.
Nurse. That's right. That's right.
Yes,
Yep.
Philadelphia has Nick Nurse because he got
And
fired
then
from
Phoenix
Toronto.
signed uh Lakers coach.
Yeah, Frank
Um
Vogel.
Frank Vogel,
Frank Vogel.
yes, yes.
Yep. And Monty Williams went to Detroit.
Detroit, yes. All right, so we switch gears a little bit, going over to the San Antonio Spurs. As we thought they would, they bring back Trey Jones on a 2-year, $20 million deal to play next to Victor Wembanyama. Sam, how do you see this fit? I know we talked about it last week on the podcast. Do you like this re-signing, and do you see it working well with Trey Jones probably being a starting point guard for them in the future?
Yeah. Trey Jones, just like his brother Tyus, handles the ball very well, doesn't lose the ball, doesn't turn it over that much. I believe he was one of the top two or three best assist to turnover ratio, and I believe the only person ahead of him was his brother Tyus.
Tyus, yep,
So, and he's good at defense. The only thing the difference between the two is is better offensively than Trey,
mm-hmm.
and we saw that. And Trey's worked on his shooting from the outside. But I think it works perfectly because with Victor Wembanyama, you do the pick and rolls, and you just need someone to get the ball to him. If it's on a lob, if it's throw it down into the post and let him go to work. Trey can facilitate. You don't need Trey to come in and give you 20 points a game each night. You don't need him to come do that. You need him to come play good defense, maybe give you 10 points, 10 to 11 points a game, maybe 12, and come in and give you at least 8 assists because that's what he'll come and do. He'll come and play.
Yep,
He doesn't need to score the ball. He doesn't need to do that. He needs to come in, play defense, get the ball into people's hands. Like let Malachi Branham take a bigger step. Let Victor Wembanyama give it to Jeremy Sohan. Let's see if he can take that next step. See if get the ball in Keldon Johnson's hand because we know in late games Kendall's that guy. You want him to have the ball. So I love the move and I think it's great fit. I don't think the only person I could have saw the Spurs going out and getting is Fred VanVleet,
yep,
but I don't know. I don't think Fred VanVleet fits the San Antonio timeline because like I said in the last podcast, it will take a couple years before they hit.
Right. And the only reason I said it that they might go after him is for the veteran leadership and to show Victor Wembanyama what it means to be a champion day to day, and just the rest of that young core what it means to be champions. And we both agree that it'll take a few years, even if they did sign a player like Van Vliet.
Thank you guys for listening to our second episode of our NBA podcast. Be sure on the lookout for our new soccer video and soccer podcast. Follow us on social, Net to Net Podcast, and check us out on Spotify. Hope to see you guys soon. Like and subscribe. Bye.